This morning really is all about that singular message, just submitting to who God is. And I'm going to read just part of Matthew chapter 6, verse 9, we're just going to see where the Lord leads, but I want to preface with this. You can come to the altar at any time. It will not bother me. There was maybe a time when it would be distracting to me when I was a little younger in ministry if things started happening in the church. Let me tell you, friend, you can come and you can get in the corner and you can weep and wail to God and it will not bother me. I'll keep preaching until the next one comes. So the altar is always open. But let's stand and read just this opening part of Matthew 6 and 9. It's the Lord's Prayer. But we're just going to look at the very first part. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Today it's all about sanctifying God. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed, holy, set apart, sanctified be your name. I am going to read a little story that I found, a little poem, because it just spoke to me when I found it. It said, I looked upon a farm one day that once I used to own. The barn had fallen to the ground. The fields were overgrown. The house in which my children grew, where we had lived for years, I turned to see it, broke down, and brushed aside the tears. I looked upon my soul one day to find it too had grown, with thorns and nettles everywhere. The seeds neglect had sown. The years had passed while I cared for things of lesser worth. The things of heaven I let go while minding things of earth. To Christ I turned with bitter tears and cried, O Lord, forgive. I have not much time left for Thee, not many years to live. The wasted years forever gone, the days I can't recall. If I could live those days once again, I'd make Him Lord of all. When I was trying to figure this message out, because that title came from one commentary, I'm trying to understand the Lord's Prayer a little better. I'm trying to understand how it can be practical for us, not just repeated words, but something that really transforms our life, something that helps us live out our faith day to day. When I was reading about this very first part, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, I run across this phrase about sanctifying God, and it really struck me. Because when we talk about sanctification, and I talk about it, and some churches still do, though the number seems to be growing smaller day by day, sanctification is about setting yourself apart for a holy God. It is living a holy life for a holy God, because unholiness is just simply not acceptable in His presence. So being holy is not about following a list of rules, but it's rather about setting your life apart and dedicating it to God. You cannot have anything above God. You cannot have any person, any hobby, any activity. God must always come first. We are called to be different from the rest of the world. But the question that struck me, and why this title kind of stuck with me, is do we have that same reverence for God? Not only are we setting apart our life for Him, but have we set Him apart in our life? Right? Because that's something entirely different. We can get caught up in the routine of following the rules. We can get caught up in living a certain way. I've known many a good people that you couldn't really tell if they were Christians or not, and that's a shame, because the church should be even different from them. But they would never lie, they would never steal, they never took a drink of alcohol, they would give you the shirt off of their back, you never heard a foul word cross their mouth. They just lived a good life. But God wasn't sanctified to them. In other words, God wasn't someone other than, He wasn't someone wholly other, W-H-O-L-L-Y, separate from the world. He was just this God that they had heard about so many years ago. He was just some God that some people worship, but He wasn't the God of their life. He was not sanctified to them. He was not holy. And the thing is if we're going to live out a call to be different, to honor God and His Word, fulfilling what He has called us to do, then we must ensure that God has the proper place in our life. Your prayer will not be of any effect if God is not first in your life. If He is second, you are treating Him like a genie in a bottle. When you have a need, you are going to pick up your dusty Bible and your dusty genie bottle off of the shelf, and you're going to give it a rub, and you hope that Jesus pops out and you can get your 3 wishes and put Him back up until you need Him again. Friend, that ain't the way God works. He has to have a special place in your life. The natural flow of life is that we move from passion to passion and hobby to hobby. That's the natural flow of our life. How many of you have the same hobbies and the same interests you did when you were 20? If you're 20, you can't answer that. If you're 40, you can. If you're 60, you can answer it a couple of times. If you're 80, you can answer it even a few more. Because that's kind of how our life goes. Even what we like to eat changes every so many years. There was a time when I really liked Hamburger Helper. We used to buy it. My goodness, I bet we fixed it 3 or 4 meals a week. The cheeseburger, Hamburger Helper. Loved it. Loved it. And then one day we were at the store and we're like, we haven't had this in years. It had probably been 20 years since we had had any. And we seen it, so we bought it, and we were just going to reminisce a little bit and eat something we used to like. And we got it home, and it was nasty now. Right? They hadn't changed what they done, but our taste had changed. There was a time I loved collecting baseball cards. Foolishly, I got rid of a Don Mattingly 1984 rookie card from Fleer that was worth a good bit of money. I lost it in a poker game. True story. Now, I know your pastor's not supposed to tell you stories like that from the pulpit, but it is the truth. I love to collect cards. I used to love to play cards, gambling and things like that. And now, even if it wasn't contrary to my faith, the gambling part, but just the collecting cards is not contrary to faith, I just don't have no interest. Why do I want to go buy cards about overpaid millionaires that do nothing? Right? My interests have changed. Our passions change as we live. When I was 15 years old, I didn't know Joni, and I didn't have a passion for her. By the time we were 20, I was starting to learn how to be a husband, and it took me a good long while. But even our relationship has evolved over the years. Things ebb and flow, hobbies change, we learn lessons. But there's also a negative side to that as we get comfortable in what we are doing. We start developing or cultivating a relationship with God when we are in our youth, and by the time we become mature, all of a sudden it is comfortable, it is an old shoe, it is not something that we have a true passion about anymore, but it's something that we do simply out of routine. When was the last time that you stirred up the fire that is within you that was initially given to you by the laying on of hands? Talking about Timothy, wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God that was in thee by the putting on of my hands. I know that at some point you had a fire in your life, but when was the last time you took care to stir it up? Friend, I can't stir it up for you. If you come in here and you are here only because you go to church on Sunday morning, I can't help you. If you are praying only because that's what you are supposed to do when you get out of bed, friend, I can't help you. If you are only fasting because someone else told you to, I can't help you. If you are only picking up and reading the Bible because that's what you've done every morning for the last 20 years, put it down and flip on The Price is Right and enjoy your day because it ain't doing you any good. You got to stir it up. I can't do it. You've got to do it. But here's the key. You cannot stir it up if God is not in the proper place in your life. If He is just routine to you, if He is just part of what you are and part of who you are and part of what you do now, and He's not entirely holy, other, sanctified God that is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, if He is not the creator of all things in heaven and earth, if He is not Lord of your life that controls every waking thought that you have, then He is not in the proper position, and you need to stir up what was once put in you. David, and this is where I'm going to veer off a little bit. And it's so funny. I use the Bible software a lot. And it's so convenient because when I want to go to Psalm 37, verse 4, I type in Psalm 37:4 and it's there. It's beautiful. I love it. Except for when you make a typo and it sends you to the wrong chapter. And then God really wrecks your mind and you end up in a whole different place. I was trying to go to Psalm 37:4. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. And my point to that was we absolutely must avoid all kinds of apathy. Because if we don't sanctify God in our lives, we get apathetic. We lose our passion, right? It's still part of what we are, but it's not who we really worship, right? This jacket is part of who I am today. And if I treat God the same way as I treat a jacket, I have lessened who He is and what He is. And we can't do that. We get apathetic. We lose our passion. We lose our drive. But if we will do what God has instructed us to do, if we will delight ourselves in Him, if we will stir up the fire that was once in us, if we will seek Him with all of our heart and all of our soul, that's Deuteronomy 4:29, if we will seek Him, and we will find Him only if we search for Him with all of our heart. God has to be someone, something different to us than anything else. God has to be above your mommy. He has to be above your daddy. He has to be above your kids. You have to put your kids out for Christ. If they are not willing to follow what Christ has said, you can't fool with them. People don't like that, but you have to have that kind of reverence for God. Period. God has to be above everything else, and if there are things in your life that is disrespecting God, if there are things in your life that is disrespecting your faith, if there are things in your life that is disrespecting the holiness that God is, then you cannot fool with that. You have to sanctify God in your life. He has to be set apart. He has to be priority. Every scripture, every breath that's been breathed from the beginning of time, everything from Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22:21 tells you that God is above all and you have to worship Him as such. You cannot have anything else above Him. Now, I would like to break down that verse for you, and I am a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you a story, I believe. I love the way that verse goes. It says, after this manner. That's just one little word in Greek. It's 5 letters. And what he's really saying, and this is Jesus talking, we're in the Sermon on the Mount. I covered this last week. If you missed it, just go back and watch it on YouTube, and you'll find it there under the playlist for this series. But it's right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, and he's talked to all of the Pharisees, and he's talked to the religious group, and he's kind of pushed back on some of them. And then he gets to this point, and he says, after this manner, therefore. One little word, 5 letters. So here's what he's saying, because you are still looking for a kingdom. Now we're talking about the beatitudes as you start in chapter 5. Because you're still looking for a kingdom, you need to pray like I'm telling you to pray. But because you still mourn things that are going on, you need to pray like I'm telling you to pray. Because you're still looking for an inheritance that is not of this earth, you need to change what you're doing, and you need to pray like I'm telling you to pray. Because you are still trying to figure out righteousness, and friend, you will never get it completely figured out. You only grow day by day. But because you are still trying to figure it out, therefore you need to do what I am telling you to do. Because you still need mercy in your life, therefore you need to do what I am telling you to do. You need to pray like I'm telling you to pray. Therefore, because you are still seeking after God, you need to listen to me, and you've got to change a little bit, and you got to do what I'm telling you to do. Because you're still trying to make your election, your adoption sure, and you're trying to be peacemakers, then you need to go ahead and you need to change a little bit, and you need to pray like I'm telling you to pray. Because you are still persecuted persecuted by the masses, then you need to change a little bit. You need to pray like I'm telling you to pray, because you still need to be salt and light. Therefore, pray after this manner that I'm telling you, because you may still struggle with letting yesterday go. Then you need to pray like I'm telling you to pray, because we need to learn to let anger go, because we need to learn to walk away from lust, because we need to still deal with walking a line between what is lawful by the world and what is right in the eyes of the Lord. We need to pray like He's telling us to pray, because we are still called to be different, but we are still living in a fleshly body with the struggles and oaths and retaliation and all the things that come with it. We need to take care to, after this manner, therefore, pray like Jesus is telling us to pray. Because of all of this, because of everything that's going on around us, you need to quit doing it the way that is not working, and you need to get into the Word of God, and you need to understand that He is trying to create in you a new heart. He is trying to create within you a right spirit. He is trying to create within you a life that will have you enter into the gates of heaven. Then He says, pray. So, after this manner, because of all of this that's went on, pray. A pray is not some kind of weak request. It is not asking you, will you consider praying to change your ways? Will you consider praying to be able to overcome? Will you maybe think about positioning yourself before me in the proper manner? No, it's a command. For those that don't know, and y'all probably get tired of me hearing it, but that's okay. You're going to continue to hear me say it. Prayer is not about petition, it's about position. The word prostrate comes from prayer, the root. Prayer in Greek is proseuchomai, to pray. Prostrate, positioning yourself before someone greater than you. Not in petition, but in sanctifying God in your life. If you go to Him with a petition, He's the genie in the bottle. But if you go to Him in humbleness and broken, and you honor Him for who He is, then all of a sudden He is indeed high and lifted up. And friend, let me let you in on a little secret. You can treat Him like a genie in a bottle all you want. You can rub your little magic Bible and you can demand that God give you something, and He will give you nothing, and you have not changed His position. All you have done is made your heart known. Pray. Let me put this in hillbilly vernacular. That's second person plural. All y'all. Not just y'all, all y'all. Every single person. Joni don't like that word, but I hope y'all understand what I'm saying. Hillbilly vernacular. All y'all, position yourself before me. And it's an imperative. It's non-negotiable. It is absolutely non-negotiable. You cannot develop a relationship with God the Father. You cannot get the things that you need of this earth. You could go on through the prayer and you can see the things that you need, the daily provision, the interaction with other believers, the desire for the kingdom of heaven. None of that happens if you don't follow the command to position yourself before Jesus Christ. Nothing good ever happens if you do not sanctify God in your life. And then to go further, it's most likely in a middle voice. Y'all have heard me talk about this briefly before. In English, either you're doing the action or someone is doing the action to you. That is active or that is passive. In Greek, they have a middle voice. And when he's saying, all of y'all pray, that is an imperative that is most likely in a middle voice, which means You have to pray for yourself, but the action is going to come from God. In other words, when you take the effort, you put in the effort to position yourself before a holy God, then there is a holy God that has already put in the effort to save your soul. It is not about the things of this earth, like Brother Stanley was talking about when we were singing. It is not about your knee. It ain't about your sore toe. It ain't about the car that you drive or even meeting your light bill, whether you live in poverty or whether you're living in riches, whether you have aches and pains or whether you feel like you could jump over the moon. None of that matters, but He has already made the effort. He has already shed the blood on Calvary's cross so that you can put Him into a proper position in your life, not for the here and now, because the here and now is temporal and the temporal shall pass away, but there is an eternal heaven that He already has waiting for you when you simply submit your life to Him. That is the truth of prayer. You pray for yourself, but with action from the one to which you pray. It takes God meeting you there, but it takes your initiative. Does that make sense to you? You have to take the initiative, but God has to meet you there. It is not the begging petition, but it's an active positioning. In other words, how much do you trust God? Do you trust Him just to bow down before Him and know that He's going to do the right thing for you? Once you are active and going, then you have to be passive and sitting and waiting. And that's a hard thing to do. But we have to do that before we can ever approach the throne with boldness. Now, I know in Hebrews it tells us, let us come boldly before the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in a time of need. But you cannot go boldly to a holy God if you are not holy yourself, and if you have not treated Him as such. Right? You have to sanctify yourself, but you also have to sanctify God in your life. And then when you do, then that opens up a whole different world to the relationship that you can have with Him. Our Father, He is the one from which all things come, which art in heaven. He is high and lifted up. He is otherworldly. He is the creator of all things. He is holy and separate. He is hallowed. Now, there's a little story I was going to tell in Leviticus about how God struck dead the sons of Aaron because they put a strange fire on the altar. And He said, those who are near me, I will be sanctified. God Himself said He has to be sanctified. You can go read that in Leviticus chapter 10. But I want to try to tell you a little story, and I'm going completely from my notes here. I'm going to Psalm chapter 3. If you can put that up, it's just like 8 verses. And I'm going to try to tell a little story about what it means for God to be sanctified in your life, because I feel like this is vital. I need you to understand that I'm not trying to beat you up this morning. I'm not trying to beat you down this morning. We all have failures in our life. I have been transparent about some of mine. I've done some stupid stuff in my life, but you know what? Through it all, God loved me. Through it all, there was always a path of reconciliation that I could come back. Now, I told you about making typos. When I went to go to Psalm chapter 37, verse 4, I ended up in Psalm chapter 3, verse 7. And I looked at it and I could not understand why my Bible was saying, arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for thou hast smitten all of my enemies upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. That's one of my favorite verses. Pray for God to smash the teeth out of their head. You ever pray? You hear me talk about praying prayers of David? That's it right there. That's it. And that's really not a joke. David did it. But I couldn't understand why I was there. So then I looked and I'm like, oh, I'm in Psalm 3. And then I looked, and that psalm is from one of my favorite Old Testament people. Someone that was anointed and chosen above his brothers. Someone that was called out to be king, but then had to serve. Someone that defeated a giant and then had to go into hiding. Someone that his king tried to kill him, but also someone that committed great sin over and over and over again. But yet God still called him through it all the apple of his eye. And then I looked at this particular story, and it amazes me even more that in the middle of this story, that David has come to a point where he could pray for God to smash the teeth out of someone's head. I'm giving you hillbilly vernacular. You can see the King James there. Hillbilly vernacular seems to convey a little better. This particular psalm, here's the story of David. He gets anointed. He goes to serve the king. He defeats a giant. He has Israel on the map because God has called him to do as such. And then all of a sudden the king is jealous and he's trying to kill him. And he's just in a mess. And then he finds a little favor. The king gives him a wife. And then he takes the wife away and gives her to another man. That's David's life. And then he has to go run and hide. He's living in the very people that he defeated. He's having to live life with them. Then they get concerned and they don't want him there anymore. And all of a sudden they kick him out. And now he has to go back to where he come from. And then he gets in this place in Ziklag where even those that have been loyal to him and have tried to help him want to stone him to death because they have lost everything. And David had to find a way to encourage himself in the Lord. And then he continues living life, and then he's all of a sudden in war, and he's trying to conquer, and he's trying to win land for the Lord, but he don't go where he's supposed to go. Instead, he goes home. He should be out on the battlefield with his men, but he's not. He's at home. And he's at home, and he's looking down. Uriah, I believe, was Bathsheba's husband's name. And Uriah's on the battlefield, but there is Bathsheba on the rooftop. And he decides he wants the one little sheep when he has all of Israel. There's a parable that Samuel comes and talks to him about. And so he takes Bathsheba, and then he ends up losing his son. And in that, he sits down and he writes Psalm 51 in the middle of his sin and his trial and his tribulation. Lord, take not your Holy Spirit from me. He said, if you will just save me again, then I'll do everything I can for you. I will make your ways known to everyone. But see, that wasn't the only psalm that David wrote in trouble. You see, because even after that, if you go right on past all of that in 2 Samuel, you will see that he had a son by the name of Amnon who raped his daughter Tamar, his sister, Amnon's sister, David's daughter. And then David did nothing about it. And I preached that message here on a Wednesday night a couple years ago when I finally figured out a good reason that story is there, because David lost his moral authority. So he didn't even bother to address what was going on in his own home because he himself had just come out of the exact same situation. And Absalom, his other son, one of his other sons, won the favor of Israel and was trying to make things right by Tamar and really usurping the authority and the power of David. And David had to run because his own son was trying to kill him. So you see, it wasn't just the sin that David sat down and wrote in when he had a son that died, but it was also later on when he was running from his own son who wanted to kill him that he sat down and he penned Psalm 3. It says, a psalm of David when he fled from Absalom his son. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. You know what the modern world does to us? Is the modern world tells us that we have to do all of these things to make it right, and then we can never go back, and we can never get back that same authority and all of these other things, even within the Church of God. And I love the Church of God, and I believe we're as right as any denomination, but there are certain things that you do in our denomination, you will never be able to be restored to this church. You can be restored to God, but you will never get your license back. I know a few people that can never, ever again be restored as far as licensure goes. They'll never be restored to the pulpit. Now, in some ways, I think it's wisdom, but in some ways, are we not a little bit unbiblical? Now, here's why I say that, because David had committed rape. He had committed fornication. He had committed adultery. He was a terrible example as a father. He was a poor example as a national leader. He was disobedient to God. He was unfaithful to his wife. And he was unfaithful to his children. And not only that, he was unfaithful to the men that served him as him being king, and he was unfaithful to the nation. That is David. The apple of God's eye, that is him. But then somehow he knew that God was still God. Now see, when I talk about sanctifying God, it's not just in the good things, and it's not just about certain points in your life, but it's in every point. If you really believe that God is who He says He is, even in your sin, you should know who you can go to. Even when you have committed the most grievous things that you could commit in your life, you have to understand that God is still high and lifted up, and your sin has not diminished His authority. Your sin has not diminished His holiness. Your sin has not diminished His grace or His mercy, and you can always come back to Him and re-sanctify Him in your life and be back exactly where He had called you, because as Paul put it, the gifts and the callings of God are without repentance. I have come this morning to tell you that it doesn't matter what you have done. It doesn't matter what you are doing right now, but you can do exactly what David done. You can look and say, "Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God, but thou, O Lord, art a shield for me. You are my glory and the lifter of mine head." You see, it doesn't matter what you've done. God can forgive you. It doesn't matter what thoughts are racing through your head. God already knows, and He is ready for you to sanctify Him in your life. It doesn't matter what you are planning to do. You can change your destination today. All you have to do is sanctify God in your life, and when you sanctify God in your life, then all of a sudden you have become a new creature, a new creation. You have been renewed in your spirit. You won't worry about what was. All you'll be worried about is what can be. You won't worry about the things that you can't change. You'll just be worried about praising a holy God that has called you into a holy presence. I cried unto the Lord with my voice. We have gotten away from that a little bit. Oh, you can pray in private. You don't need to let everybody know your business. You're right. You don't need to let everybody know your business, but you need to let them know that you're serious about changing your business. You need to lift your voice to a holy God. He didn't crucify Christ tucked away somewhere that nobody's seen. He put Him up on Calvary to suffer the shame of us all. Why are you ashamed to cry to a holy God to where someone can hear you? I laid me down and slept. Look, I'm the world's worst. Here is a transparent moment. Stuff's going on, I'm not sleeping. I don't sleep a whole lot anyway. I slept 7 hours the other night, and I woke up and thought I'd been transported to another world. I normally sleep between 5 and 6 hours max. It doesn't matter. That's going to be my max. If I get over 6, I'm just out of sorts. When I slept 7, I woke up and I thought something had happened bad. And if something's going on, I'm sleeping less. If one of my sons is pursuing me, trying to kill me because of what one of my other sons done and what happened to my daughter, I'm not sleeping. And I doubt, seriously, if you are honest with yourself, any of you are sleeping. And I think that's why God directed me to this. I don't think it was just a typo that brought me to this. But I want you to understand what sanctifying God in your life can do for you. When you put Him in the proper place, you don't have to worry about the things of this world. You don't have to worry about the people in your life. You don't have to worry about what may or may not happen, because you understand who God is, and you understand that He is indeed omnipotent. He is all-powerful. He is the one that can stop the enemy. He is the one that, if need be, can smash their teeth out of their head. He can deceive them. He can make them think that 4 little lepers or the entire army coming down for someone. He can change the atmosphere of where you're at, and He can handle everything. He can bless you when you don't deserve it. He can forgive you when you've not even asked for it. He can exhibit mercy when you are the most unmerciful person on earth. He can extend grace to you even when you don't extend it to those around you. He is God, and He can do whatever He wants. He is indeed all-powerful, and David knew that. Even in all of his sin and all of his running and all that he had done wrong, he still understood who God was, and he cried out to Him. And when he cried out to God, it didn't matter that his own son was trying to kill him. He had such a peace because he sanctified God that he was able to lay down and sleep. I long to get to that kind of place in my life. Can I tell you, I'm not there yet. If that's going on in my life, I'm telling you, I'm not sleeping. And maybe I shouldn't tell you that as your pastor, but I'm telling you the truth. I don't know that I'm there yet. I can sleep through a lot of things, but if that's going on, I'm not sleeping. He went on to say, I will not be afraid of 10,000 of people that have set themselves against me round about. Now, do you really think one person can fight 10,000? That ain't happening. It is not happening, but God can. And that is all he was looking for. He trusted God no matter what was going to happen in that point in his life, so much that God was entirely other. He understood that God is our Father, which art in heaven. Hallowed, holy, sanctified be your name. Verse 8, I'm not going to read all of verse 7. I'm going to read verse 8 and then we're going to close. Here's what he understood. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. It didn't matter what he had done. It doesn't matter what you've done. It didn't matter how terribly he had behaved, how many people he had hurt, how terrible of a sin he had committed. He was chosen and anointed by God. Every one of you in here today, Jesus Christ went to a cross for. What that means is you were chosen by God. You were chosen before you were ever born. He looked ahead in time. He prayed for you. John chapter 17. Y'all should know this by now. If you've been here twice, you've heard me say that at least once. Probably twice. In John chapter 17, he prayed for you, and then after he prayed for you, he died for you. He died for you knowing that you were going to sin. That you were going to commit more than one sin. Because we have all sinned and come short of the glory of God. Now, I'm going to guess that none of you in here have sat idly by while your family was assaulted, that you didn't say nothing, that you committed fornication and adultery, murder, because he had Uriah killed. He made sure to put him in battle where he would be killed. That you were disobedient to God, did everything he told you not to do. And somehow, though, you still let the devil whisper in your ear that you're not worthy, that you can't move forward. You need to be like David. Paul said to follow him as he followed Christ. I'm telling you to follow David as David followed. Why? Because most of us are not Paul. Paul was all in one way. He encountered Christ and he was all in the other. Most of us are more like David. We're more like Peter. We waver. We're in and out. Our passions change, right, as we go through life. David certainly exhibited that. But he sat down one day and he come to a place and he realized God really is who he said he is. God is the one that anointed and called me. And though I have been foolish, salvation belongeth to the Lord. And that his blessing is upon his people. Friends, if we will come to the place, corporately, individually, where we can understand that there is nothing that we can do that can lessen what God has done. Nothing. It can change your eternal destination. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying? It can lessen your life. But no matter what you do is going to lessen who God is. He committed murder and adultery, and it did not lessen who God was. No matter what you have done has not lessened who God is. And today, if you will only sanctify God in your life, then I believe that verse is for you. Not just that salvation is from the Lord, but I believe His blessing will be upon your life. I believe that with everything in me, because when we lift God up, when we hallow His name, then that is our reward. Salvation is His, and His blessing is upon His people. I'm going to give a very simple altar call today. If you have not submitted your life to Christ, then I would urge you to do so. It's not about saying certain words, it's about repenting from who you were. Repenting means with a sincere heart intent on change. You can't change yourself, but God will help you. For everybody else, I would ask you, examine yourself. Have you sanctified God in your life?